The council chamber was packed with alien beings from across the galaxy. Their voices filled the air with angry sounds and clicking noises. Some looked like giant insects with sharp eyes. Others appeared as tall crystals that glowed with inner light. A few resembled dragons with scales and long necks. They all had one thing in common. They were angry at humans. Jake Morrison stood alone in the center of the room. His uniform was clean and pressed, but his face looked tired. He'd been Earth's military representative for 5 years. He had seen many meetings like this one, but none had felt so dangerous. The chamber was huge, with walls made of some kind of metal that changed colors. Above them, stars could be seen through a clear dome. The space station orbited a planet called Kepler Prime, which was supposed to be neutral ground for all species. Ambassador Clixvio stepped forward. He was tall and thin, with 4 arms and eyes that looked like black jewels. His species, the Zephyrians, had been the first to complain about humans. His voice was high and sharp when he spoke. "The humans have broken our laws," Clixvor said. "They have built colonies where they should not. They have given weapons to species that should not have them. I think they can do whatever they want." Jake watched the alien speak but did not move. He had heard these complaints before. The humans had indeed helped other species, but only when those species were being attacked or killed. The council had done nothing to help, so humans had stepped in. Another alien moved forward. This one looked like a living crystal, tall and clear with light moving inside it. The creature's name was Resonant 7, and it spoke without moving what might have been a mouth. "Look at this evidence," the crystal being said. Pictures appeared in the air above them. The images showed human ships, human weapons, and human space stations. The humans are preparing for war. They have more ships than any other species. They have weapons we do not understand. Jake wanted to laugh, but he kept his face serious. The humans did have many ships, but most of them were used to protect trade routes and help other species. The weapons were defensive, built to stop raiders and pirates. But the council did not want to hear the truth. Senator Lisa Harper stood up from her seat. She was an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She had been Earth's top diplomat for 20 years. She knew how to talk to aliens better than anyone. "Council members," Lisa said, her voice calm and clear. "Humans have only helped others. When the Balani were attacked by raiders, we protected them. When the Korthok could not feed their people, we shared our farming knowledge. When the Villani homeworld was dying, we fixed their air. We have done nothing but help." A dragon-like creature with red scales made a loud noise. "You helped without asking us first. You shared technology without permission. Think you know better than the council?" Jake felt his anger growing, but he kept it inside. The council had rules about sharing technology, but they also had a duty to help species in danger. When people were dying, humans could not just watch and do nothing. More aliens began to speak. They talked about human colonies in their space, even though the space had been empty when humans arrived. They complained about human trade deals that were too good, even though both sides had agreed to them. They worried about human influence on younger species, even though that influence had saved lives. The truth was simple, and Jake knew it. The aliens were afraid. Humans had only been in space for 300 years, but they had already become one of the most important species. In the galaxy, they were good at making friends, solving problems, and getting things done. The older species did not like this. The council's leader, a tall creature with blue skin and 3 eyes, stood up. His name was Vextel, and he came from a species called the Draconians. They had been the most powerful species in the galaxy. For thousands of years, the council has made its decision, Vextel announced. Humans will stop building new colonies immediately. They will give us all their advanced weapons. They will let us control what new technology they create. We'll accept junior membership in the council with limited voting rights. The chamber became quiet. Jake could hear his own heartbeat. He looked at Lisa, who had gone pale. The demands were not just unfair. They would make humans into servants. "You have 30 standard days to agree," Vextel continued. "If you refuse, humans will be banned from all council space. You will not be allowed to trade with any council species. You will be completely alone." Jake stood up slowly. He was not as tall as most of the aliens in the room, but somehow he seemed to fill the space around him. He pulled out a small communication device and held it up so everyone could see. "Admiral Collins," Jake said into the device. His voice was steady and calm. "This is Morrison. Execute Protocol 7. We're going home." The aliens began to make noise again, but this time it sounded worried instead of angry. Protocol 7 was not a secret. It was humanity's plan for complete withdrawal from galactic space. Every species knew about it, but none of them had thought humans would actually use it. Lisa Harper stood up and walked to Jake's side. She looked around the chamber at all the alien faces. Some looked surprised, others looked scared. A few still looked angry. "The human race thanks the Council for making this decision easy," Lisa said. "We came to the galaxy hoping to make friends and help. Others, instead, you have decided we are a threat. Very well. We will remove that threat by removing ourselves." She paused and looked directly at Vexel. "We will be gone within 6 months. Every human ship, every human colony. We will take our technology, our knowledge, and our help with us. Good luck managing without us." The chamber exploded into noise. Some aliens were shouting. Others were trying to speak at the same time. A few were already leaving, probably to contact their governments. Jake and Lisa walked toward the exit. As they reached the door, Klixvor called out to them. "You cannot do this," the insect-like alien said. "The galaxy needs stability. The Council maintains order." Jake stopped and turned around. For the first time since the meeting began, he smiled. It was not a happy smile. "You're right," Jake said. "The galaxy does need stability. It needs someone to protect the weak, help the poor, and stop the bullies. For the last 300 years, humans have been doing that job. Starting tomorrow, it's your job." He looked around the chamber one more time. "I hope you're better at it than you were at recognizing who your friends were." Jake and Lisa left the chamber. Behind them, the aliens continued to argue and shout, but their voices sounded different now. They sounded worried. As they walked through the corridors of the space station, Lisa asked, "Do you think they'll change their minds?" Jake shook his head. "No, they're too proud. They'll realize their mistake eventually, but by then it will be too late." They reached their ship, a small vessel that would take them back to the human fleet, waiting at the edge of the system. As they prepared to leave, Jake looked back at the space station one last time. "They wanted us gone," he said quietly. "Now they'll get exactly what they asked for." The ship pulled away from the station and headed for the stars. Behind them, the Galactic Council was about to learn what the galaxy looked like without human help. It would not be a lesson they would enjoy. 3 weeks had passed since the council meeting, and the galaxy was watching something it had never seen before. Humans were leaving. Not just a few humans, but all of them. Every single human in the galaxy was packing up and going home, Captain. Emma Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, looking at the biggest fleet of ships anyone had ever seen. Transport vessels stretched as far as the eye could see. There were cargo ships, passenger ships, military escorts, and mining vessels. All of them were heading away from the galactic core, back toward Earth and human space. Emma's job was to make sure every human civilian got home safely. It was the biggest evacuation in history. Over 2 billion people needed to be moved from 47 different worlds. Some had lived on those worlds their entire lives. Some had never even seen Earth. "Captain," her communications officer called out. "We're getting messages from the Balani government. They want to know why we're shutting down the medical centers." Sighed, the Balani were a peaceful species that looked like tall, thin cats. Humans had built hospitals on their worlds because their own doctors could not cure a disease that was killing their children. Now those hospitals were closing. "Tell them to contact the Galactic Council," Emma said. "This is their decision, not ours." On the planet below, Dr. Kevin Price was overseeing the shutdown of the largest medical facility in the sector. He had worked here for 15 years, saving lives and training alien doctors. Now he was watching his life's work disappear. "Doctor, what about the patients?" asked Nurse Jenny Walsh. She was young and had come to this world fresh out of medical school. Tears were running down her face. Kevin looked through the window at the waiting room full of sick aliens. Many of them would die without human medical technology. The alien doctors had learned a lot, but they still could not perform the complex surgeries or create the medicines that humans could. "We take our equipment and our knowledge with us," Kevin said quietly. "We have our orders." The medical computers were wiped clean. The advanced surgical machines were loaded onto transport ships. Medicine factories were shut down and dismantled. Within a week, the most advanced medical center in 3 star systems would be an empty building. Similar scenes were happening across the galaxy. On Vega 7, the mining operations that provided rare metals to dozens of worlds were closing down. The human engineers destroyed the mining equipment rather than leave it behind. Without those metals, many alien technologies would stop working within months. Colonel Nathan Cross was in charge of the military withdrawal. His forces had been protecting alien worlds from pirates and raiders for decades. Now they were pulling back to human space, leaving those worlds defenseless. "Sir," said Lieutenant Tony Marshall, "the Korthok are begging us to stay. They say the Dakari raiders will attack as soon as we leave." Nathan looked at the tactical display. The Korthok mining colonies were scattered across 6 star systems. Human patrol ships had kept the raiders away for 20 years. Without those patrols, the colonies would be sitting ducks. "Our orders are clear," Nathan said. "We destroy all defensive installations and withdraw all personnel. The Council wanted us gone, so we're going." The early warning systems that humans had built were shut down one by one. These networks had detected incoming raiders and pirates, giving civilian populations time to hide or evacuate. Now those systems went dark. The automated defense platforms that protected shipping lanes were destroyed. Human engineers made sure nothing useful was left behind. If the aliens wanted human technology gone, then it would all be gone. On the agricultural world of New Kansas, Mayor Rebecca Stone was overseeing the evacuation of 12 million humans. The planet had been humanity's breadbasket, growing food for both humans and aliens across the sector. "Ma'am," said her assistant Carl Peterson, "the Tendari are asking if they can buy this year's harvest. Their people are going to starve without it." Rebecca looked out at the vast wheat fields that stretched to the horizon. The automated farming systems could grow enough food to feed 50 million people. But those systems were built by humans, maintained by humans, and programmed by humans. "Load what we can onto the transports," Rebecca said. "Destroy the rest. We can't leave functional farming equipment behind." The great combines that harvested the grain were loaded onto cargo ships. The irrigation systems were shut down. The soil treatment facilities were dismantled. Within a month, the fertile fields would start dying without the carefully balanced nutrients that human technology provided. The worst part was the reaction from the alien populations. Many of them had become friends with their human neighbors. They had worked together, traded together, even married each other in some cases. On New Angeles, the largest human colony world, people were crying as they said goodbye. The city had housed 12 million humans, but it had also employed millions of aliens in factories, shops, and offices. Ambassador Helen Carter was making her final rounds of the diplomatic district. She had spent 30 years building relationships with alien governments. Now she was burning bridges that had taken decades to construct. "Ambassador," said Secretary Dan Roberts, "the Vellani Prime Minister wants to meet with you. He says his people will die without our atmospheric processors." Lynn paused. The Vellani homeworld had been poisoned by their own industrial accidents centuries ago. Human technology had cleaned their air and made their world livable again. Without constant maintenance, the atmospheric processors would fail and the planet would become toxic again. "Schedule a meeting," Helen said finally. "But make it clear that this is goodbye, not negotiation." The meeting was heartbreaking. The Vellani Prime Minister, a creature that looked like a walking tree, literally begged Helen to reconsider. His species numbered in the billions, and 90% of them lived on the homeworld. Without the atmospheric processors, they would all die within 2 years. "We never voted against you," the Prime Minister pleaded. The Council made this decision without asking us. Please, do not punish our children for the Council's mistakes. Helen felt sick, but she had her orders. I'm sorry, she said, but the Council spoke for all of you. They said you didn't need human help. Prove them. Right. The space around human worlds became crowded with ships. Every transport was packed with people, equipment, and supplies. Logistics were incredible. Families that had lived on alien worlds for generations were learning they would never see. Those places again, Captain Roy Stevens commanded one of the cargo fleets. His ships were loaded with industrial equipment from human factories that had employed millions of aliens. Assembly lines that had produced everything from vehicles to computers were being torn down and shipped away. Captain, his first officer, reported, "We're getting emergency calls from the Altarian crystal cities. Their power grid is failing without our fusion generators." Roy checked his manifest. The fusion generators were indeed on his ships, along with the technicians who knew how to maintain them. The Altarians had never bothered to learn how the generators worked. They had just assumed humans would always be there to fix them. Not our problem anymore, Roy said. The final insult came when human merchant vessels stopped running their trade. Routes. These ships had connected the galaxy, carrying goods between species that were thousands of light years apart. Human captains knew the safe routes, the best prices, and how to negotiate with dozens of different species. Captain Steve Johnson had run the same trade route for 20 years. His ship, the Starlight Express, carried medical supplies from the Draconians to the Korthok mining worlds, then brought rare metals back to Draconian industrial centers. The route kept both species healthy and wealthy. Sir, his navigator said. The Draconian trade minister is offering us triple pay to continue. The route? Steve laughed bitterly. 3 weeks ago, his government voted to kick us out of the galaxy. Now he wants to pay us to stay? Tell him to ask the Council for help. As the weeks passed, the full scale of the human withdrawal became clear. Humans had been involved in everything. They had built the infrastructure that connected the galaxy. They had provided the security that kept trade routes safe. They had supplied the technology that made modern alien civilization possible. But they had done it so quietly and efficiently that most aliens had never noticed. They had assumed the galaxy ran itself. Now they were learning the truth. The final human ship left alien space on a Tuesday. Ambassador Helen Carter was on board, carrying the last official message from humanity to the Galactic Council. The message was simple: good luck. As the ship jumped to hyperspace, Helen looked back at the stars they were leaving behind. Somewhere out there, 12 different alien species were about to discover what their galaxy looked like without human help. She did not think they would like what they found. 6 months had passed since the last human ship left alien space. The galaxy was learning what life looked like without humanity, and the lessons were harsh. Council Chairman Vexelel stood in the emergency meeting room looking at reports that made his 3 eyes burn with shame. The proud Draconian had been so sure that removing humans would make the galaxy better. Now he was reading about disasters happening across dozens of star systems. Sir, said his aide, a young Draconian named Zeknel. We have another emergency report from the Outer Rim. The Dakari raiders have attacked 6 more colonies this week. Vextel growled deep in his throat. The Dakari Syndicate was a group of pirates and slavers that had always been a problem. But when humans had been in the galaxy, their patrol ships had kept the raiders away from civilian targets. There were no patrols, and the raiders were attacking everywhere. What about our fleet? Vextel asked. Our ships are too slow, Zeknel admitted. By the time we arrive, the raiders are gone. The human ships were faster and knew how to predict where attacks would happen. The truth was embarrassing. Draconian ships were built for power, not speed. They were designed to fight other big ships. In organized battles, human ships had been smaller and faster, perfect for chasing pirates and protecting trade routes. On the other side of the galaxy, Dr. Zeeksklar was writing a report that would shock the scientific community. The Altarian crystal being had been studying the technological crisis that was spreading across known space. The situation is worse than we thought, Zexcler said to his research team. 67 critical systems across the galaxy were maintained by human specialists, medical equipment, power generators, atmospheric processors, mining operations, water purification plants. All of them are failing. His assistant, a younger crystal being called Harmony 3, pulsed with worried light. What about the backup systems? There are no backup systems, Zexclar said grimly. The humans were the backup systems. We became so dependent on their expertise that we stopped training our own people to do these jobs. The report was devastating. Entire planets were losing power because their fusion generators were breaking down, and no one knew how to fix them. Hospitals were closing because the medical equipment was too complex for alien doctors to maintain. Water treatment plants were failing, leaving billions without clean drinking water. The first major disaster had happened on Balani Prime. The peaceful cat-like aliens had been completely dependent on human medical technology to treat a genetic disease that affected their children. Without the human doctors and their equipment, children were dying by the thousands. The Balani government had sent desperate messages to every species in the galaxy, begging for help. But no other species had the knowledge to treat the disease. The human doctors had been the only ones who understood the complex. Genetic therapy required Prime Minister Yelkin of the Balani was facing the worst crisis in his species' history. 15% of all Balani children were born with the genetic defect. Without human treatment, they would all die before their 5th birthday. We must contact the humans directly, Yelkin told his council. Send a message to Earth. Offer them anything they want. But the messages sent to human space received no response. The humans had closed their borders completely. Every attempt to contact them was met with automated warnings to stay away. Meanwhile, the trade networks that had connected the galaxy were collapsing. Human merchant ships had carried cargo between species that were thousands of light years apart. They had known the safe routes, the best prices, and how to negotiate with dozens of different cultures. Captain Mortek of the Korthok was trying to deliver mining equipment to the Tendari homeworld. The Korthok looked like walking rocks, and they were excellent miners, but terrible pilots. They had always relied on human ships to transport their goods. Navigator Mortek said, "Where are we?" His navigator Burrovel looked confused. "I think we are in the Vega sector, but I am not." Sure, the human nav beacons are not working anymore. They were lost. The navigation network that had guided ships safely across the galaxy had been maintained by human technicians. Without regular maintenance, the beacons were failing one by one. Ships were getting lost in space, some never to be found again. Korthok's ship eventually found its way to the Tendari homeworld, but the journey had taken 3 times longer than usual. The delay meant that critical mining equipment arrived too late to prevent a cavern that killed 200 Tendari workers. The Tendari themselves were facing a different crisis. Their homeworld was overpopulated and could not grow enough food. To feed everyone, it always imported food from human agricultural worlds like New Kansas. Now those worlds were empty, and there was nowhere else to get food. Tendari Food Administrator Velmore was looking at reports that made her sick. "We have enough food for maybe 4 months," she told the Planetary Council. "After that, people will start starving." Tendari had tried to start their own farms, but they did not know how to use the advanced agricultural techniques that humans had developed. Their crops were failing, and millions of people were going to die. The worst situation was on the Vellani homeworld. The tree-like aliens had been living on a planet with poisoned air for centuries. Human atmospheric processors had cleaned the air and made the planet livable, but those processors required constant maintenance by human engineers. Chief Engineer Nalvor was watching the atmospheric readings with growing panic. "The oxygen levels are dropping," he reported to Prime Minister Relkon. "The toxin levels are rising. We have maybe 18 months before the air becomes unbreathable." The Vellani had tried to maintain the atmospheric processors themselves, but the technology was too complex. They had broken 3 processors while trying to repair them, making the situation worse. "How many of our people can we evacuate?" Prime Minister asked. "Maybe 1%, Nalvor said quietly. "We do not have enough ships. Okay, most of our people will die here." The Galactic Council was completely overwhelmed. Chairman Vextol had deployed every available ship to patrol duty, but it was not enough. The Council fleet had been designed to fight major wars, not chase pirates and protect trade routes. Admiral Quintal of the Council Defense Force was explaining the situation to the emergency assembly. Can protect maybe 20% of the space that humans use to patrol, he said. The rest is now a free-fire zone for raiders and pirates. The numbers were terrifying. Pirate attacks had increased by 400%. Trade had dropped by 60%. Dozens of colonies had been abandoned as their populations fled to safer areas. The Zephyrian Empire was facing internal rebellion. Without human peacekeepers to maintain stability, old ethnic conflicts were breaking out across their territory. Ambassador Clixver, who had led the prosecution against humanity, was now dealing with civil war in his own space. Sir, his military advisor said, the outer colonies are declaring independence. They say we cannot protect them anymore. Clixver felt sick. His species had been proud of their vast empire, but it had only been possible because human ships had helped keep the peace. Now that empire was falling apart, the scientific community was also in crisis. Human researchers had been involved in almost every major project in the galaxy. They had provided unique insights and technologies that no other species possessed. Now those projects were failing. The dark matter research station in the Andromeda sector had been abandoned. The project to develop faster-than-light communication had stopped. The terraforming efforts on 17 worlds had been cancelled. Decades of progress were being lost. Dr. Resonance 7, the Altarian who had helped prosecute humanity, was now dealing with the collapse of his own research programs. We never realized how much we depended on human creativity, he admitted. To his colleagues, they saw solutions that we could not see. The final blow came when the Council's own headquarters was attacked. The space station at Kepler Prime had been designed with human defensive systems, but without human technicians to maintain them, the defenses were failing. A group of desperate pirates, emboldened by the chaos in the galaxy, attacked the station directly. They knew the defenses were weak, and they wanted to steal the advanced technology stored there. The battle lasted 6 hours. Half the Council leadership was killed or captured. The survivors were forced to evacuate to a backup facility that was much less secure. As Vextol looked at the ruins of the Council chamber, he finally understood the magnitude of their mistake. Humans had not been a threat to galactic civilization. They had been the foundation that made galactic civilization possible. Without them, the galaxy was returning to the primitive, violent state it had been in before first contact. Species were fighting each other over resources. Pirates were attacking at will. Technology was failing across dozens of worlds. The proud aliens who had demanded humanity's removal were now learning what the galaxy looked like without human help. It was not a lesson any of them would forget if they survived long enough to remember it. 1 year had passed since humanity left the galaxy, and the situation was getting worse every day. The Galactic Council was falling apart. Half of the member species had stopped paying their membership fees because they were too busy fighting. For survival, Ambassador Resonance 7 stood in what remained of the Council's emergency headquarters. The crystal being was leading the first expedition to try to contact humanity. His mission was desperate, but it was their only hope. "The ship is ready," reported Captain Veltar, a draconian officer who had volunteered for the dangerous mission. "We have the most advanced communication equipment the Council could build." The ship was called CSS Harmony, and it represented the best technology the remaining Council species could create together. But even their best was not as good as the equipment humans had used routinely. Remember, Resonance 7 told the crew, "We are not demanding anything. We are asking for help. Be respectful." The journey to human space took 2 months. The CSS Harmony had to take long routes around areas that were now controlled by pirates. The safe routes that humans had maintained were all gone. When they finally reached the border of human space, they found automated beacons warning them to stay away. The messages were simple and clear. Galactic Council vessels are not welcome in human territory. Turn back immediately. Captain Veltar tried sending peaceful messages explaining their mission, but the only response was the same warning repeated over and over. The humans were not interested in talking. On the other side of the border, Captain Terry Blake was monitoring the alien ship from his patrol vessel, U.S. Monitor. He had been watching the galaxy fall apart through intelligence reports, and he knew why the aliens had come. Sir, his communications officer said, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. They say they just want to talk. Terry shook his head. Orders are orders. No contact with Council species. They made their choice. The CSS Harmony spent 3 weeks trying to make contact. They sent messages in every human language they knew. They offered trade deals, technology exchanges, and formal apologies. But they received no response except the automated warnings. Finally, Resonance 7 had to admit defeat. The expedition returned to Council space with nothing to show for their efforts except the knowledge that humans would not help them. Back in the galaxy, things were getting much worse. The Villani homeworld was dying. The atmospheric processors that kept their air clean had failed completely. The tree-like aliens were suffocating on their own planet. Villani Prime Minister Relkin was facing the end of his species. How long do we have? He asked his science advisor. 6 months, maybe less, came the reply. The air is becoming poisonous. Our people are already getting sick. The Villani had tried everything. They had begged other species for help, but no one had the technology to fix atmospheric processors. They had tried to build new processors, but they did not understand the science involved. Thousands of Villani were dying every day. Children were the first to suffer because their lungs were smaller. Hospitals were overflowing with patients who could not breathe properly. Meanwhile, the Dakari Syndicate had grown from a pirate group into a conquering army. With no human patrols to stop them, they had captured 4 entire star systems. Their leader, a brutal creature called War Chief Sekdar, was planning to attack the Galactic Council's remaining territory. The galaxy is weak, Sekdar told his raiders. The humans kept them safe, but the humans are gone. Now we take everything. The Dakari had always been violent, but they had been kept in check by human military patrols. Human ships had been fast enough to catch raiders and strong enough to fight them. The remaining Council fleets were too slow and too few. Council military advisor Quintal was trying to organize a defense, but he did not have enough ships or trained crews. We can protect our core worlds, he told Chairman Vextel, but everything else will be lost. The Dakari assault on Kepler Prime was devastating. The space station that had been the Council's headquarters was attacked by hundreds of raider ships. The station's defenses, originally designed with human help, had been failing for months. The battle was brutal and one-sided. Council ships tried to defend the station, but they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. The Dakari had learned to fight by watching humans, and they used those lessons against the aliens who had driven humans away. Half of the Council leadership was killed in the attack. The other half was captured and taken as slaves. Chairman Vextel was among the prisoners, his proud scales broken and bloody. The evacuation was chaos. Thousands of alien civilians tried to escape in any ship they could find. Many vessels were destroyed as they tried to flee. Others were captured by the Dakari and their passengers sold into slavery. On the human border world of New Terra, Admiral Peter Collins was reading intelligence reports about the disaster. The Human Intelligence Network had been withdrawn but was still functional. They knew everything that was happening in the galaxy. Sir, said his aide, Commander Gary Mitchell, the Bellani government has sent another message. They're offering us their entire planet in exchange for medical help. Admiral Collins felt sick. The Bellani were peaceful people who had never done anything to hurt humans, but they had been represented by the Council when the decision to expel humanity was made. What about the Korthok mining guilds? Admiral Collins asked. 3 of their colonies had been wiped out by raiders. The survivors are hiding in deep space. They've lost 90% of their production capacity. The reports kept coming. The Tenderi homeworld was facing mass starvation. Their population had dropped from 8 billion to 3 billion in 1 year. The Zephyrian Empire had broken apart completely. With different factions fighting each other for control, President Carol Johnson was dealing with pressure from some human leaders who wanted to help. She understood their feelings, but she also remembered the humiliation at the council meeting. Ma'am, said Secretary of State Ryan Parker, some of our colonies are asking permission to send humanitarian aid. Carol looked out the window at New Terra's capital city. It was growing rapidly as human refugees from the galaxy arrived every day. These people had lost their homes because of the Council's decision. Our first duty is to our own people, Carol said. The aliens made their choice. They must live with it. But the most desperate plea came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Clixivore, the Zephyrian who had led the prosecution against humanity, appeared on all human communication channels. The proud insect-like alien looked broken and defeated. His once shiny shell was dull and cracked. His voice was weak when he spoke. People of Earth, Clixivore said, I am Ambassador Clixivore of the Zephyrian Empire. I led the effort to remove you from our galaxy. I was wrong. He paused, his arms shaking. My species is dying. A bioweapon released by raiders has infected our breeding colonies. Children are being born sick and twisted. We do not know how to stop it. The message was being broadcast across human space. Millions of humans were watching the alien who had demanded their exile, now begging for their help. I know we have no right to ask, Clixivore continued. We drove you away when you only wanted to help us, but our children are innocent. They did not choose to make you leave. Please, if you have any mercy, help them. The message ended with Clixivore on his knees, something no Zephyrian had ever done before. His proud species was facing extinction, and he was willing to abandon all dignity. To save them, Dr. Angela Foster was watching the broadcast from her laboratory on Luna Station. She was humanity's leading expert on alien biology, and she understood what the bioweapon was doing to the Zephyrians. We could help them, Angela told her research team. The bioweapon is designed to attack their genetic structure, but we know how to neutralize it. Her assistant, Dr. Mark Williams, shook his head. The government will never approve it, not after what they did to us. But Angela was already thinking about the innocent Zephyrian children who were suffering. The adults had made the decision to expel humanity, but the children had done nothing wrong. The debate was happening across human space. Some people wanted revenge against the aliens who had humiliated them. Others felt that humanity should be better than that and help those who were suffering. Commander Luke Stevens was preparing a small relief mission in secret. He had gathered a group of human volunteers who were willing to risk their careers to help the dying aliens. We're not doing this for the Council, Luke told his volunteers. We're doing this because it's right. Humans help people who are in trouble. That's who we are. The mission was small and unofficial. One medical ship with supplies for the Volani homeworld. It was not enough to save everyone, but it might save some as the ship prepared to leave. Luke thought about the galaxy they had left behind. The great civilization that had existed for thousands of years was dying. Ancient species were going extinct. Entire worlds were being abandoned. The aliens had watched humanity walk away, thinking they could manage without human help. They were learning that some mistakes cannot be undone. Some bridges once burned cannot be rebuilt. The galaxy was paying the price for its arrogance. The cost was higher than anyone had imagined. 2 years had passed since humanity left the galaxy, and the great galactic civilization was dead. What had once been a community of 12 species working together was now a collection of dying worlds in empty space. President Carol Johnson sat in her office on New Terra, reading the daily intelligence reports from the galaxy. The news was always bad, but today it was worse than usual. 3 more species had gone extinct in the past month. Entire star systems were now empty of intelligent life. Ma'am, said her aide, Secretary Ryan Parker, the Council of Presidents, is meeting today to discuss the relief mission request. Carol nodded. Commander Luke Stevens had been asking for permission to send official humanitarian aid to the surviving alien populations. His unofficial mission to the Volani homeworld had saved 200,000 lives, but billions more were still dying. The meeting was held in the Great Council Chamber of New Terra's Capitol building. Representatives from all human colonies were present either in person or by hologram. The debate had been going on for months. We should help them, argued Governor Lisa Chen from the Proxima colonies. Yes, they treated us badly, but we're better than they are. We don't let people die just because they made mistakes. They didn't just make mistakes, replied Senator Mike Davis from the Centauri system. They tried to make us slaves. They kicked us out of our homes. Why should we save them when they wouldn't even listen to us? The argument had been heard many times before. Some humans wanted revenge for the humiliation they had suffered. Others believed that humanity should be above such feelings. Admiral Peter Collins stood up to address the assembly. He was one of the most respected military leaders in human space, and his words carried weight. I've been reading the intelligence reports for 2 years, Collins said. The galaxy is dying. Not just the governments or the trade networks, but the species themselves. The Villani are down to their last 1,000,000 people. The Villani children are still dying from the genetic disease. The Korthok have lost 90% of their population to starvation and raiders. He paused and looked around the room. The question isn't whether they deserve our help. The question is whether we can live with ourselves if we let entire species go extinct when we have the power to save them. Dr. Angela Foster had been invited to speak about the medical situation. She had been studying the various diseases and problems affecting the alien populations. The bioweapon affecting the Zephyrians is spreading, she reported. It's not just killing their children anymore. It's starting to affect adults too. At the current rate, they have maybe 6 months before their species is completely extinct. Room was quiet. Even the humans who wanted revenge against the Zephyrians felt uncomfortable about the idea of watching. Children die from disease. What about the others? President Johnson asked. The Tendari are eating their dead to survive, Angela said quietly. The Villani are suffocating on their own home world. The Villani are watching their children die in agony. We could stop all of this suffering with a few medical ships and some basic supplies. The vote was close, but humanity decided to act, not for the alien governments that had expelled them, but for the innocent people who were dying through no fault of their own. Luke Stevens was put in charge of the relief operation. He had been planning for this moment for months, and his fleet was ready to go. Remember, Luke told his officers, this is purely humanitarian aid. We're not getting involved in their politics. We save lives, and we leave. The relief fleet consisted of 20 medical ships, 10 cargo vessels full of supplies, and 5 escort ships for protection. It was a tiny force compared to the fleets humanity had once deployed across the galaxy. But it was more help than the aliens had seen in 2 years. The first stop was the Villani homeworld. Luke's medical team, led by Dr. Kevin Price, worked around the clock to repair the atmospheric processors. It took 3 weeks, but they managed to clean the air enough for the Villani to breathe safely. "Well, thank you," Prime Minister Relkin said to Dr. Price. The tree-like alien was crying tears of sap. "You have saved our entire species." Kevin felt uncomfortable with the gratitude. "We're just doing what's right," he said. "Take care of your people." The next stop was the Villani homeworld. Dr. Angela Foster brought with her the medical equipment needed to treat the genetic disease that was killing Villani children. The treatment was complex, but human doctors had been using it successfully for years. "We can set up treatment centers on 5 of your worlds," Angela told the Villani leadership. "But you'll need to train your own doctors to continue the treatment. After we leave?" The Villani doctors worked day and night to learn the procedures. They knew this might be their only chance to save their children. The most difficult mission was to the Zephyrian breeding colonies. Should have been nurseries and to places of horror. Zephyrian children were being born with terrible deformities. Most died within days. Ambassador Clixfor met the human medical team personally. The proud alien who had once demanded humanity's exile now looked broken and desperate. "I know. I have no right to ask," Clixfor said to Dr. Angela Foster, "but can you save them?" Angela looked at the sick children in the medical bay. They looked nothing like healthy Zephyrian young. The bioweapon had twisted their genetic code, making them into something that barely resembled their own species. "We can neutralize the bioweapon," Angela said. "But the children who are already affected, there's nothing we can do for them. They're too damaged." Clixver nodded sadly. "Can you prevent it from affecting future children?" "Yes, we can create a vaccine that will protect your species from this bioweapon and similar ones." The treatment took 2 months. Human medical teams worked with Zephyrian doctors to develop and distribute the vaccine. Thousands of Zephyrian children were saved, but millions had already died. As the relief mission continued, Luke Stevens received reports about the rest of the galaxy. The situation was even worse than they had thought. The Dakari Syndicate now controlled half of what had once been Council space. Species were fleeing their homeworlds to escape slavery or death, Sir reported. His intelligence officer, Lieutenant Tom Jackson, the Altarian Crystal Cities are under siege. The Dakari are using them as target practice. Luke made a decision that went beyond his orders, contacted the remaining Altarian government, and offered to evacuate their population to safety. "You can take your people to neutral space," Luke offered. "But we can't defend your homeworld. It's not what we're here for." Resonance 7, the crystal being who had once helped prosecute humanity, accepted the offer gratefully. "Gosh, you are saving us even though we tried to destroy you." Luke thought about the question. Because that's who humans are. We help people who need help. We don't help people because they deserve it. We help them because they need it. The evacuation of the Altarian population took 3 weeks. Millions of crystal beings were transported to safety in human ships. Their homeworld was destroyed by the Dakari 2 days after the last evacuation ship left, when the relief mission finally returned to human space. They brought with them refugees from 6 different species. These aliens would be allowed to settle in human territory. They would live as guests, not as equals. President Johnson met with Luke Stevens to debrief the mission. "How bad is it out there?" she asked. "The galaxy is finished," Luke said. "Simply, the great civilization that existed for thousands of years is gone. Most of the species are dead or dying. The survivors are scattered and powerless." Johnson looked out the window at New Terra's growing skyline. The human colonies were thriving. New cities were being built. New technologies were being developed. Humanity was moving forward while the galaxy they had left behind fell apart. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Johnson asked. "Leaving them to face this alone?" Luke was quiet for a long moment. "They made their choice," he said finally. "They decided they didn't want our help. We gave them exactly what they asked for." 5 years later, Admiral Peter Collins stood on the observation deck of the UES Explorer, humanity's first ship designed to reach the Magellanic Clouds. Through the windows, you could see the construction of the generation ships that would carry humans to a new galaxy. Behind them, the Milky Way continued to burn. The great trade networks were gone. Safe routes between stars were controlled by pirates. Most of the alien species were extinct, and the few survivors lived in hiding. Collins thought about Jake Morrison, the man who had delivered humanity's ultimatum to the Galactic Council. Jake was retired now, living quietly on a farm on New Terra. Sometimes Collins wondered what Jake thought about when he looked up at the stars. The aliens had watched humanity walk away, believing they could manage without human help. They had been proud of their ancient civilizations and their advanced technologies. They had seen humans as upstarts and threats, but humans had been more than just another species in the galaxy. They had been the ones who kept the peace, maintained the infrastructure, and helped those who could not help themselves. They had been the foundation that made galactic civilization possible. Without that foundation, everything had collapsed. The aliens had gotten exactly what they wanted, a galaxy without human influence. But they had also gotten something they had not expected,